Hello, welcome back to another 5 on my channel. I'm Jacob from Jake's Book Corner, and today we're going to be reading The Ghost of the Shadow Market, which is written by Cassandra Clare, Sarah Reese Brennan, Maureen Johnson, Kelly Link, and Robin Wiseman. I do want to take note that there's some spoilers for the Dark Artifice is probably in here, the Mortal Instruments, and of course the Infernal Devices. So just be aware. One spoilers. This was released after the fact of Queen of Air and Darkness, and so I have no idea if there's any stories that take place afterwards. I think there is. If I'm not mistaken, I think the final story is actually the furthest in the timeline that we get. If you've never been here for a bind up before review, I'll link my whole entire playlist for all the Shadowhunter content. So basically, we look through all the stories together. I talk about each of the stories. I review them, and also I do review each of the stories as I read them on Goodreads. I will update you guys every time on Goodreads if I can't update you guys physically while talking. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 stories. I think it's like 600 or so pages. There is illustrations in the book, and so I'll be showing you the illustrations as well. Oh my god, yep, I just saw kids' name. But once again, there will be spoilers, so just be prepared for that. I'll be talking in full spoilery details for the entire Mortal Instruments series. This one particularly follows Brother Zachariah as he goes through the Shadow Market. I'm not really sure. I think so. Brother Zachariah, by the way, is his Neltham name is called Jim Carstairs, who is a part of. That's a big reveal. He'll play a big role here with. I'm sure Tessa will also show up. I'm sure there's other characters throughout the series as well that will show up as they do. These stories will date back. I think the first one's from the 1900s, if I'm not mistaken, 1903. So it's also probably going to be read by a whole cast of characters. So Cast Along Shadows. This is the first image of the book. Very beautiful. And yeah, the Shadow Market, London, 1901. So yeah, I'm really excited to jump into it. If you guys don't know, I really enjoy the bind-ups. I'll update you guys when I can. Back to this. And so yeah, this follows Brother Zachariah as he's going through several ghosts of different shadow markets throughout many different countries and continents and things. Either way, we're going to talk about the stories individually and so forth. So the first story is Cast Along Shadows, which I gave a 5 out of 5 stars. This takes place back in 1903. This is the beautiful illustration that is with it. I feel very self-cautious because you're watching me, but that's okay. Can't do anything about it. So this takes back in London, 1901. This is, if I'm not mistaken... Oh, okay. So this is Matthew, you know how in Tales of Shadowhunter, Matthew and James, how they get kicked out of the Shadow Institute. So he finds Matthew at one of the Shadow Markets, and it's kind of a story centered around Tessa and Will and Brother Zachariah and stuff. And I really liked it. It was fun. There wasn't anything I don't think super duper important that happened throughout it. I did give it a 5 out of 5 stars. But this was before I realized how much Tessa, Will, and just other characters were going to show up. Because in Bane Chronicles and Tales from Shadowhunters, it was very selective. There wasn't a lot of different stories that were taking place with past characters, and so I was much more lenient to give those characters 5 out of 5 stars than I was for us to give this. Also, this is one of the first stories where they introduced Tessa's dad and trying to find Tessa's dad. It's an overarching plot line. So if we move on to every exquisite thing, which I gotta go to the page, oh, that's a very beautiful photo. That's the photo this one comes with. This follows, I always forget. This is also London, 1901. Oh, this is Anna. Okay, so originally this was going to be like a 3. This takes place after the events of Clockwork Princess and things. I think the last one also obviously took place. All this takes place after TID. But this one follows the Whitewoods and Jessame and I can't think of his name, but you know what I'm talking about. They end together at the very end of Clockwork Princess, and this follows their daughter, who likes dressing up in boys' clothes back in London in 1901, which is obviously very taboo. And the reason why this actually ended up getting a 5 out of 5 stars is because it made me cry. Originally, it was going to be like a 3 because there is no point to it. We're getting introductions to all these characters that will become important, I'm pretty sure, in Chain of Iron. And so I'm making notes of them, but I'm like not like super specific about them. And the way Jessame just accepts her daughter for liking girls and just buying her own suits and when she cuts her hair and stuff, I was just really a big fan. I also like the cast of characters. I'm really excited. I also was really hoping just to jump straight into Chain of Gold, and I didn't do that, obviously, since I'm reading this. So, yeah. The next one I didn't like as much, which is Learn About Loss. Has that photo. And this one takes place at a carnival, that's right. And the storyline directly affecting Jem/Zachariah, I really liked. This is why I got a 3 out of 5. Because I think half the story was really good, whereas the other half of the story wasn't. Also, every time a demon shows up, I'm just, like, a huge fan. Like, I think demons are so funny in the Shadowhunter universe. Not all of them, obviously. Some of them are pretty bad. But, like, most demons that show up in, like, side stories and stuff are just hilarious. And so this is another one of those ones where I just thought the demon was really funny, even if he meant well. This is also the time where Will is dying, and so Tessa's going through this huge grieving process, and Jem gets the opportunity to either figure out who the Lost Herondales are, which are the beginnings of, you know, Ty's kid's legacy. Gets to figure out who they are and go hunt them down, which is the reason why I gave it a 3 out of 5, or go back and be himself and to live with Tessa. He obviously chooses the latter, but his friend who is working with him the whole time ends up choosing, Sister Amelia, ends up choosing to hold the demon accountable, and so he does get to spend his last days with Will, which is really nice. It was really cute. Not last days, just like a few hours and stuff, as they were when they first got introduced, which I really liked. The next one is A Deeper Love, and by the way, I'm kind of just like totally passing over. I don't remember what the B storyline here. I just know I did not like it. So we're just moving forward. A Deeper Love is centered around Tessa. That's a beautiful photo, by the way. I would love to get that in color and frame it. Love that. This is Tessa and Jem during the war. This is London, December 29th of 1940. This is when they were bombing London. Huge accuracy right there, you know. And Jem's still trying to figure out who Tessa's dad is, but also trying to figure out who the Lost Herondale. Actually, I think we learned that Tessa's dad is a greater demon, which just means he's like really, really high up, which it could answer a lot of questions later on in series if they ever brought it back up again. But with this one particularly, this one was about trying to find the Lost Herondale still, and Jem is getting really hurt and almost dying. And so it was all about the war and all about how much Tessa doesn't want to lose him. They spend one night together of intimacy, which is their first night. It wasn't like actual sex, which is really nice, but it was more like they were just cuddling and yes, what sex? Sex is a part of these books. They have sex. And it was more like they were cuddling and things, which is obviously against a whole bunch of rules and laws. And I really liked it. This was a 5 out of 5. Now, The Wicked Ones, which is the next story, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be wrong, it's also another beautiful... Look at these artworks, guys. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Maybe I'm wrong. This is Alicante. No, I'm right. I hate this. Take it back. This is a 3. This is actually the one where actually Jem does find out who like the next line actually ends up being a girl in this one who is the Lost Herondale or part of the Lost Herondale line. But this takes place during Valentine era, and I absolutely freaking hate Valentine's era. I hate them in the books. I hate them in all the short stories. Every time it pops up, I'm just like, can we move on? This is also a direct sequel to one of the other short stories told back, I think, in Tales of the Shadowhunter, if I'm not mistaken. It could be in Bane Chronicles, but I'm pretty sure it's Tales of the Shadowhunter. And I just got really annoyed with that storyline. It was really offensive in my opinion. And so ultimately, I was just really mad the whole time I listened to this. And so yeah, this was a 3 out of 5 because I really did like everything that was going on with the Lost Herondale and them coming to terms with it not working out the way it did. Also, the whole time, Jem is slowly losing his mind because he is slowly letting his past life to go away. And then, is that the last one we get to talk about? Because I think the next one I'm currently in the middle of reading. I think I did read Son of Dawn. Son of Dawn, yes, I did. Son of Dawn is the introduction of Jace Herondale, or Jace Lewin, I think is what his name is back here. This is when he gets to go meet. This one, I gotta say I was kind of sucker for. This is also a 5 out of 5 for me. So you guys all know Alec Lightwood is the most adorable little creature in the world when he's a child. He's an asshole when he grows up, but he's adorable when he's a child. Now he's adorable again. And he flirts with Raphael, which was not a scene that I knew I needed in my life until I read it. And I was just super duper, I was laughing at work. I was like, this is great. Because he like fully hits on Raphael and then he hits on Jace like 10 minutes later, which is just great. Good for him, you know? And so yeah, so this is what this is about. And I just really liked all the characters. I liked seeing them younger, as that's never been shown before in the universe. So it wasn't technically a necessary story. I don't know if I've read any where it's super duper necessary, except for the few ones that had taken place with Chain of Iron. I know there's one in here that takes place with Kit. And then, so yeah, The Land I Lost, I'm pretty sure is what I'm currently reading, because this is the Alex storyline, yeah. Which I'm very much enjoying, but I'm only halfway through, so that's my updates for right now. I'm really liking it so far. It looks like it's going to be a 4 out of 5, but it depends on how many more stories get a 3. I think we're pretty good from this point forward. This one, the new one that I'm reading right now, takes mostly place with Alec, which we all know I'm a huge fan of. Alright guys, final update for Ghost Shadow Market. The biggest difference is my hair is now blonde. I got nothing for it. I finished Ghost Shadow Market, and so we talk about the final like 3 or 4 ones. I have to say, on a side note, this is by far my favorite collection. I think I said that about Tales of Shadowhunter because I think Bane Chronicles was all over the place. Tales of Shadowhunter was very, like, that's a straight story. This is also a straight story to an asterisk. This gave a 4.75 stars because I did have some minor issues. I had 2 or 3 stories that did get a 3-star, but almost every single one of these got a 5. I got one that had a 4, and which a 4.5, which we're gonna talk about. All right, so I think the one I ended on was the land I Lost, which is the Alec-driven story. So this is the image for The Land I Lost. This one is written by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan. This one centers around Alec, and this takes place in 2012 after Alec and Magnus already have Max, and we see him go off. He gets called off to go to Mexico because in Mexico, the shadow market is practically being blocked off, and the leader of the shadow market, the person who like runs the whole thing, says they only will talk to Alec Lightwood. And due to Tessa and Jeremiah, or Jem's mission, because Jem is officially back to being Jem himself, due to their mission, they need to get into the shadow market to find the lost Herondale, which will come up. And so basically the whole point of this one is figuring out the corruptness in Mexico. And we meet Jaime again, who was in Mexico, which is Diego's cousin or brother, Diego's brother. I'm pretty sure it's the same character on Thanos listening to this audio, but I'm like 96% sure. But we also met a little boy named Raphael. Now, when Raphael was introduced later on, and he is introduced in Queen of Air Darkness and stuff, as having a second child, I always thought that they got the child as a baby and named it after Raphael Santiago because Raphael was such a huge and important and crucial moment for Magnus entirely. I mean, there's that whole bit in Queen of Air and Darkness. I guess I shouldn't spoil it, but like I told you, I can spoil it. It's fine, because of the final story here, where it's gonna get spoiled anyways. When they go to Fool and Queen of Air and Darkness, and he literally is like, oh, I can't believe they named after their son. I can't believe Magnus would do that to me. And it's just hilarious, and it's totally a Raphael moment. Like, Raphael is one of those characters that I want to go back and reread the entirety of Clockwork of City of Bones of the Shadowhunters, just for the simple fact that I want to see his character development. Lily is also a very important character, and I didn't really ever pay attention to Lily. She's been throughout most of the series. She shows up, I think, somewhere I think she shows up in the beginning of the Mortal Instruments, but she doesn't really become a central character until I'd say like book 5 or so. She is the head downwater vampire. She's the one who runs all the clans and stuff. And the way they world builded the clans for the vampires was phenomenal as well in this. But she was also her best friend was Raphael, you know. And so there's a lot of moments, and she cared about him a lot to the point where when he died, it was really, really hard on her specifically. And so with Raphael, and so the mutable kid named Raphael, and Alec automatically takes the liking. Max has been asking for a little brother and sister every time one of them runs off, says, "Are you going to bring home your little brother and sister?" And sure enough, this is the story of how Raphael became a family member between Max and Alec. Then you have the side storyline with Jim and Tessa, who do play a huge larger role into the full line, where they meet where we get retold the same story of the Lost Herondale and what that meant, but we get a little bit of extra details into explaining of how the Lost Herondale bloodline gets continued on. Now, I want to say, because I'm not entirely sure, I would have to go look, to be honest with you, at the next one. This was a 5 out of 5 stars, by the way. It's also the longest one in the collection. It's like 140 pages or something like that. And I really liked it. I think, I wonder, yeah, okay, I do know what the next one is, because we have the one, yeah, see, yeah, total spoilers for Clear in Darkness. Honestly, though, if I'm gonna be honest with you, if you guys are wanting more Clear Night before I spoil it, and you've never read this before, and you want more Clear, I'm gonna start this over and just go with this. I should not start that over. I was gonna redo my intro for Ghost Shadow Market. It's fine. Anyway, I'll put it in my intro as well. But I'm going to put it here. The final 2 stories do take place after the events of Clear in Darkness. It's the furthest in the timeline that we've gotten so far. The 3rd book in the Magnus and Alec trilogy that they're doing will also be a part of that. It takes place in the timeline in the middle where the wrong powers, the dark powers, something powers, takes place. That new trilogy is coming out after Chain of Gold and Chain of Iron and Chain of Brass. Is that what it is? I don't remember the last one's called. And so it's the sequel series, the final series, to wrap up all the books and stuff. So yeah, all right. Now we're going to jump into my reviews and stuff. The Land I Lost, which is the Alec storyline. Alec and Jim. Well, Alec gets this note. He's there with Magnus, and this is one of those stories where it opens with a demon. They're like training Max, and the demon is just so funny, and I just love him to death. And I'm a huge fan. A part of the reason why the Bane Chronicles really worked for me was because of the fact that the demons inside the Bane Chronicles were so charismatic, and I think so written so well. I don't know if a lot of people feel that way, but I personally really did feel that way when I read them, and this felt very much like that, where all the demons you like, you know, the whole storyline in that one where Magnus wasn't sure about their first date between him and Alec, and he was talking to a demon about, like, what do I get a Shadow Hunter boyfriend? You know, that whole thing. It's great. I love it. This is the image for The Land I Lost, by the way. It's gorgeous. I want it. I want all of these. That's besides the point. It's also the longest novella in this whole collection. It's written by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Reese Brennan, and the big points here is that Alec has to fly off to Mexico to basically reorder the corruptness that is going on there. He is obviously a big believer in Downwater. He's a big believer in all these other things, and so when he gets there and he realizes that the shadow market is closed off because the shadow hunters themselves are extremely cruel and vicious to Downwaters, he took this as a personal offense, to the point where even going to the place to find refugee, to find shelter, and they tell him, no, you can't basically stay here. I mean, he can stay there because who he is, but you can't basically stay here because you married, or you're marrying. I don't actually, yeah, no, I'm pretty sure it is his husband. No, I don't think so. That you are engaged to a Downwater, and that you're engaged to a boy Downwater. All these different things play into, not everybody treats him this way, but there is a great selection of characters in that Pacific area that did treat him this way. And then he's also with Lily, which is the head vampire. It's very important. She was a very important character throughout most of the series, but she has a very beeline storyline throughout most of it, where it's not really centric. Obviously, vampires themselves kind of fell away to the back side of the world, because we had no longer a vampire in the main trilogy, or the main trio of characters that we follow. And so when you don't have that, you lose the element of it, basically, is essentially. And so Lily got thrown off. So I really liked the world building of the vampires in New York. I think it was fascinating. I just loved it, and I just really, really adored it. And then other stuff that I really, really liked, that we meet the little boy. So in Queen of Air and Darkness, they do have a second child. His name is Raphael, and this is that child that is they're talking about. They meet a little boy in the shadow market when he's let in. He's let in, by the way, the thing is he like saved her at one point in time, and so he felt really granted, and she's never been seen such a nice and kind shadow hunter. She also has a crush on him, as everybody else. Lily's punchlines in this, oh my god, Lily is so obsessed with Jim. Like, there's one where it's like, when we climb that gym scene, and I was like, this is great. I love it. And Alec is so awkward and so, like, squeamish around it. It's just adorable, and I was so excited, and I was just so happy about it. So, yeah, that was a major win for me. Lily did good this time around. I really liked her character, and, which is really interesting, because something happens later on in the story that makes no absolute sense whatsoever, which we'll get to. And so basically, they learned that the main person, the person who's running the institute in Mexico, is running a rink where they are breeding werewolves, essentially. These female werewolves are brought down into this cage, and they are basically tortured and bred, and it's disgusting, it's horrible, and so they save them, and he ends up getting a son out of it, and it's adorable, and this is like 5 out of 5 stars. The other thing is that we did learn is that the Herondales, because they're still looking for the Herondales, Jem and Tessa they got a little bit more details of where they could be. That they got a story about this girl and where they could be. But they still don't know. They're still searching, essentially, is by the end of the story. The second story is Through Blood, Through Fire. This is written by Cassandra Clare and Robin Wazerman. This is also another one. I always forget Jem is Japanese. And so it's brought up into the story. I'm like, oh, that makes so much sense. But I always forget it. And so, like, when there's a picture of Jem and Tessa, who Jem looks like he's 12, which is kind of weird. Tessa should also look younger. I'm not really sure how they convince people that they're not teenage. I don't know. By the way, the big parts here, the big segues, I should say, are this is Kit's story. Kit and Ty both have their individual stories. Like I said, the final 2 stories inside this collection are direct sequels to the point at where we're going to talk about it. I think a part of this needed to maybe be an added-on extra epilogue, because it was so blatantly put in here where it was not needed, which we'll get to. But this story does involve finding Kit. Tessa transforms into his mom, so basically we show up at the house, and it's the same scene from Lords of Shadows where Tessa jumps in and the woman dies. And so Kit is basically, he's there, he's hurt, but he's not really sure why, and Tessa storms into his mother. Actually, that's not true. I jumped ahead. I jumped way far ahead. So basically, they show up at the mom's house in a story previous. Oh my god. In one that takes place previously, Jem gave a bird, which is a symbol. Anytime it is called upon, he will show up. This is a very important thing going forward. This is going to be a symbol and an emblem that will be used a lot. It was used actually quite a bit in the Infernal Devices. It took a break in the Mortal Instruments and Dark Artifice, and it'll be brought back in with the Wicked Powers. It also probably is important in the Last Hour series, but I've not read those, so I can't hold any context to those whatsoever. I met some of those characters, but I have not read from them. And so basically, Jem had given this woman at some point in her life that she needed to call upon. She could. Well, this woman does eventually call upon Jem. They get there too late because LA traffic is a jam, and she ends up dying. Tessa ends up forming and switching into this woman's body, learning her whole past. We get to see her whole life from the time she met her husband to the time where Kit was officially born, named Christopher, and trying to hide that past and instilling the fear and fate of basically Shadowhunters. They don't fear Downwarders, they fear Shadowhunters, which is a very interesting and twistable thing that I never really picked up on when reading through the Dark Artifice with Kit's character, and so that's also another fascinating and underlining loop that does make a lot of sense and things. Once again, we, from future reference, do know who Kit is related to, why Kit is so important. It's talked about in this. You know, he is half fairy, he is half shadow hunter. It's never been done before. Well, it has, but it's just I just doing it differently. Um, and so these are where the warriors of Milan come in, which makes a lot of sense. They did, I guess, they did show up in Lords of Shadows. I just forgot because if you guys have not seen my Clarinet Darkness spoiler vlog, I get really confused when they're in here, and now I'm really happy they're dead. So they end up killing his mom, and they end up flying away. Well, she learns where there's a possibility where Kit could be, and they end up going there, and his dad obviously dies as the story progresses and Kit's life gets worse. But he ends up finding a home with the Blackthorns, and the whole point of this is finding that lost Arendelle and to succeed. But also with the side plot of Tessa getting pregnant. Tessa ends up getting fatally wounded in this whole altercation, leaving her body useless and powerless, and her going through these long conversations with people of her past, from Will to Jem, and not really being able to surface. Well, there's only one reason why she can surface. One, the way her magic works, no one really does understand because she is one of kind. But also, the fact, which is really interesting, I want to know why she's only one of a kind and why they don't ever brush off onto her children. Maybe this child is very special because the child she is born with, which is later on named Nina, is well, keeps her alive basically, and that's when she learns that she is pregnant. So that's how Tessa knew she was pregnant. Now the next story was was intriguing, I gotta say. Here's the thing with the last two stories, they were intriguing. I enjoyed both of them in their own respective way, but they didn't really have anything concretely to do with the story that we're telling. I would say this one is much more forgiving. The Lost World, which was written by Cassandra Clare and Kelly Link. I don't know why I'm crying, ignore that. I don't have any emotions. I don't know what you're talking about. And this is a story centered around Libby and Ty. This takes place 6 months after the events of the Dark Artifices, and Ty is living in the Scholomance, which will be a big player, I'm assuming, in the Wicked Powers. With the Scholomance, Ty is linked to Libby, and so Libby he sends her off. They're doing tests, they're doing a whole bunch of different things, but he sends her off into Alicante to figure out if he can learn any information based around Alicante, to figure out what the next big move is for the Concord. Like I said, all this stuff is spoilers for the Dark Arv. If you never read the Dark Artifices, at the very end, they seal off Alicante from all the Shadow Hunters, except for the ones that believe that Downwater should not be a part of Alicante, essentially, is what they're for. It's just fucking annoying. Zara. It's Zara, guys. Zara and her father, who I think is dead. So I think it's just Zara. You know, it's just the children of the Concord. And basically, they learn that they are planning something extremely wicked and that they will come back eventually. He comes back and she does tell him, and he's like, oh, you should go tell, I should go tell Magstar so he can tell Mormor, so he can go tell Magnus that something could be coming. And she's like, I want to go do it. This was my information. Let me go do it. I can go there. And so she does. She goes to where Magnus is at. Magnus is at the house of Tessa and Will, or Tessa and Jem, because she's giving birth. It's the morning of her birth. She gets to interact with Kit a little bit, who is doing really bad. But all of Libby is a great person, because I know this. You know this. We all know this. Ty really loves Kit. I know this. I'm not wrong. I thought I was wrong for a minute. I am not wrong. This is once again reaffirming my love for Ty and Kit. I'm such a huge supporter. I want the Wicked Powers now. That's besides the point. Ty is basically in denial. Ty doesn't understand what happened. He doesn't get it. He doesn't understand. Kit's gone through so much trauma, so much loss, that he just shut down. He believes that nobody loves him, which is why it's actually kind of endearing in the next story, which we'll get to. And so Libby's like, you need to write to Ty, and Ty needs to write to you. Or Libby tells Kit that he basically needs to, or there's some corresponding that needs to happen. And so basically, he goes there, and she breaks the plate, she breaks a lot of glass, and then Magnus says, I'll go find you, go hang out with Kit while we give birth to the baby. And so he does, but she ends up feeling something really wrong with her. Obviously, Kit freaks out. She goes back to Ty, and Ty was put into the, the infirmary, basically. And essentially it's that they can't be so far apart, or it ends up hurting him. I have a few theories about this, is that maybe they're linked directly through his body, and so the further she goes away, the further realer she becomes, because when she was far enough away, she was thinking about jumping inside Tessa's baby, to be reborn again, and I don't know if that would have just killed Ty altogether. I'm very curious. Obviously, this bond will eventually probably be broken in the Wicked Powers, is my assumption. I don't know. But this does mean Livy is a full-fledged character that could have a full arc again, which is very interesting because she turned out to be such an amazing person in full that, you know, there's just some creativity there I'm really excited about. And essentially, she basically says, you need to write to Kit. You need to tell him, you know, you guys need to make up. And I was like, you do that. And Kit's like, Ty's like, he won't message me back. And he's like, well, then you persevere. You continue to do it. It doesn't matter if he's not going to write you back. You're going to continue on. You're going to push forward. And I was like, yes, push him. He needs a push. He needs a shove. He needs a hardcore shove. And that's what she does. And it just makes me very happy inside, essentially. That's all really important. They get the bird that we were just talking about a minute ago, and it is now linked to Magnus. And so every time everybody needs, Magnus will come. It is linked by like darker magic and stuff, and also she can hold it, and if one of them is wearing it or something, they can be broken apart for a short amount of time. Very important. Like I said, it's very important for the next things going forward. This is the image, by the way. It's of Livy. And then the next one is called Forever Fallen, which is written by Cassandra Clare and Sarah Rees Brennan. Now, I'm not entirely sure, if I'm being honest with you, which one wrote the Janus, or which one wrote Jim and Kit. I genuinely don't know which one wrote which. The Janus storyline, which is Evil Jace, essentially, it's spelled Janus. Yep, exactly how you sounded it out. And he's the one who shows up to the Queen at the very end of Queen of Air and Darkness, and he basically says, hey, I'm going to give you Ash. You need to protect him, but the one thing I want is Clary. Well, interesting things happen, I guess. He murders a few people. We start to feel, you get an understanding of what he's there for, and he was going to originally just kill our version of Jace and go back into the world that he originally once was. There's some major, obviously, problems with that theory. One, he doesn't know these people. He's no longer the kind person that Jace turned out to be, and things. Simon is no longer a vampire. Simon is a shadow hunter. You know, there's a lot of technicalities, I should say, that this plan does not work. And so it actually comes down to his storyline is simply, he goes there, he starts to spy on people, he almost kills Max, and I swear to God I was going to kill him. And he starts to learn about their behaviors, he starts to learn about their habits and things. And then he realizes that he can't get what he wants, because he eventually does get his Clary, because Clary is under the assumption that he is her Jace, and he realizes that he needs to tear them all apart and just take Clary from them. So that's the plan for the Wicked Power. The other storyline is of Kit, is of Jem and Tessa and Kit, and then also their new baby, Nina. She's like 6 or 7 months old, but she is growing, she's walking, she's teething. And so there is like a little bit mention of a shadow market. They go there for a real quick second. But ultimately, as you guys can tell, these are not the important parts. I don't think there's a shadow market in the Livy. I could be wrong. I don't think so. It's very minor, which is also possible. But with this one particularly, there's also a few other things. In the Libby storyline, they also mention of a lake, which I think could be really interesting to see. It's a reflection of the future, and so Ty would go down there and see himself, what he would see in like 10 years, which I think could be also very interesting, but that's probably the point. So basically, with the ending of this story, is Jim is basically professing his love and saying that they love him and that they care for him. And I just want to give Kit a hug, and I just want to tell him that Ty loves him too and that they should be together. But yeah, that's my reviews of this. My big takeaways here is, if you want more information on the last hours and you want to know those characters before you go into it, I highly recommend you go ahead and pick up Every Exquisite Thing or In About Loss. Anything to do with Valentine, which I didn't really realize was Jace's mother either, so that was, I guess that's interesting, but I just didn't care. his stuff, so I don't recommend. And also The Lost World and Forever Fallen, I also highly recommend. But if you're a huge fan of the Infernal Devices at all, and you're looking for more and you've never picked up before, I do recommend Ghost of the Shadow Market because it is truly. Alright guys, I will talk to you guys soon. Thank you for watching. I hope you guys enjoy. I do want to mention we are diverting path just a little bit. The next one we're going to be starting is the first one, which is Chain of Gold in the Last Hours. We're going to read those two next, and then we're going to pick up the Magnus and Alec. And then we'll be caught up. So we may have 4 more books to read, which is crazy. And those spoiler reviews will be coming to you soon. Alright, thank you for watching. Goodbye.